Now know not only what genes are there, but their order. Researchers published the genome of a tomato used by Heinz, the American food company, famous for its tomato ketchup. Ketchup is a thick sauce used on hamburgers, hot dogs, and other foods. Heinz's research manager, Rich Osmankowski, says the company knows what it wants in a tomato. Traits like sugars, and for Heinz, viscosity, or the juice thickness, and the redness of the tomatoes are all very critical traits for us, he says. Those are all controlled by a lot of different genes within the tomato. Mr. Osmankowski says genome sequencing takes away much of the guesswork for breeders of tomatoes or other crops that have been mapped. In his words, by having the genome information, we can pick out those tomato plants that have more of those genes. Until the late 1960s, the tomatoes that Heinz used to make ketchup often cracked open on the vine after a heavy rain. Heinz wanted to develop a variety that would resist that cracking. Breeders used the traditional methods of mating generations of different varieties. The tomatoes they were trying to develop not only had to resist cracking, they also had to resist disease. And they had to be easy to harvest mechanically. Finally, the company came up with the tomato it wanted, called the Heinz 1706. Mr. Osmankowski says the job would have been much easier if there had been a genetic map to follow. There were no genetic tools at the time. But the work today is not just about making better ketchup. Climate change may force many crops to adjust to new conditions. And Mr. Osmankowski says researchers are already using the new genetic tools to help fight new plant diseases. The researchers published the tomato genome in the journal Nature. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. For more news and information for people learning English, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
English Agriculture Report. Thanksgiving Day is America's version of a harvest festival. The holiday is celebrated on the fourth Thursday in November. Millions of Americans joined family and friends to give thanks and eat a meal with a history that is centuries old. Early European settlers in North America held other ceremonies where they gave thanks. But what Americans often consider the first Thanksgiving took place in Plymouth Colony. Today, we call it Massachusetts. Those settlers are known as the Pilgrims. They held a 3-day celebration in the fall of 1621. They celebrated the harvest with members of a local Indian tribe. The best-known food that Americans traditionally eat on Thanksgiving is turkey. The nation's turkey producers are expected to raise 242 million birds this year. The government says that is 2% fewer than last year. Last year's turkey production had a value of about $3.5 billion. Thanksgiving turkeys are traditionally served with a bread mixture that some Americans call stuffing. Others call it dressing. Side dishes include cranberries, sweet potatoes, and green beans or other vegetables. The meal traditionally ends with a dessert of pumpkin pie or pecan pie. Some Thanksgiving foods have changed over time. For example, most turkeys these days are bred with larger breasts to provide more white meat. Corn, known in much of the world as maize, has also changed. It tastes much sweeter than the starchier corn of the past. The way Americans prepare for Thanksgiving has also changed. Economist John Anderson of the American Farm Bureau Federation says some people look for ways to save time. He says shortcuts, like buying prepared foods for the holiday, are part of a bigger trend in America. Some people might not have the time or the desire to prepare a big meal, or the space for a lot of guests. Whatever the reason, John Anderson notes that more people go to a restaurant for Thanksgiving dinner than in the past. Aid groups and religious organizations were also busy serving Thanksgiving meals to the needy. The weak economy has increased the number of Americans receiving government assistance to buy food. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Our programs are online with transcripts and MP3 files at voaspecialenglish.com. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
English Agriculture Report. American farmers first planted genetically engineered crops in 1996. Today, 80% of the cropland for soybeans, maize, and cotton in the United States is transgenic. Genetic engineering adds or changes genes in a plant to produce desired qualities. The United States is one of 25 countries where farmers planted genetically engineered crops in 2009. An agricultural biotechnology group says planting decreased in Europe, but the amount of cropland planted with the crops rose by an estimated 7% worldwide. The National Research Council, part of the National Academies in Washington, recently published a study. The study examined how genetically engineered crops have affected farming in the United States. It found that many farmers have better harvests, better weed control, and fewer losses from insect damage compared to traditional crops. Larissa Wolfenbarger is a University of Nebraska biology professor and a member of the committee that wrote the report. She says they found that genetically engineered crops can be better for the environment. For example, she noted that crops designed to resist damage by glyphosate need fewer pesticides that are more toxic to the soil. Glyphosate is a chemical used in Roundup and other weed-killing products. But some farmers have used so much glyphosate that a number of kinds of weeds can now resist it. David Irvin of Portland State University in Oregon led the committee that wrote the report. Professor Irvin says this means that some farmers are again using the more toxic herbicides to control weeds. He says the problem needs immediate attention. Earlier this year, a professor at the University of Western Australia commented on the overuse of glyphosate. Stephen Powles wrote about it in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States. He said, "Glyphosate is as important in worldwide food production as penicillin is in medicine for fighting disease." He called for better use of glyphosate-resistant crop technology. And that's the VOA Special